Talking about a lot this morning. Of course, there are some big issues coming up this week despite the parliamentary recess. One of those biggest issues is, of course, the energy strategy, which we're expecting later in the week. Throughout the course of the last month, there has been an enormous amount of consternation in Westminster. Initially, we were told that this strategy would be announced at the start of last month, and yet it's been over 30 days and it's still yet to appear. This energy strategy is expected this week. Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng revealed yesterday that Britain could build 6 or 7 nuclear power stations by 2050 in order to move away from oil and gas. It follows reports that the Prime Minister and the Business Secretary have both been at odds with Chancellor Rishi Sunak over funding those new plants. Now, the government's long-awaited strategy is expected, as I say, on Thursday. Well, let's talk through some of the specifics now with the climate spokesperson at the Conservative Environment Network, Jack Richardson. Welcome to the programme, Jack. I suppose, first of all, this has been a very long time coming. There seem to have been an enormous number of disagreements. In your view, where are we at with this strategy? What will be included?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for having me. So I think there has been quite a lot of debate, but obviously this is a big energy security strategy. We've got quite a big problem to overcome, and we need to basically construct a new energy mix. So there's certainly going to be a lot of debate among government over how we do that, the best, cheapest, most reliable energy mix we can produce. I personally think that onshore wind has a part to play in that. It's the cheapest form of power production that we have alongside solar. It's become much more popular over the past few years, including those who live nearer to wind farms. And it has a unique ability to reduce our reliance on Russian gas or gas from the European market.
It's remarkable that this seems to be one of the biggest sticking points of the strategy. According to reports, it seems that the Prime Minister has won that battle over nuclear power. We will be getting a lot more nuclear power stations. However, they do take years to build. The question is, what comes up as we build that capacity that may well serve us well 5-10 years from now? What do we do in the meantime? I suppose one of the big arguments has been to make use of our natural gas here in the UK, which we sit on a wealth of. There seems to have been a lot of disagreement, and we're not quite sure whether this is going to make it into the strategy or not. In your view, why do you think there's been so much consternation over the issue of making use of our own gas reserves?
I'm not sure there has. So the Base Secretary has made clear that we're going to be continuing to invest in North Sea oil and gas production. We still have the policy of maximum economic recovery in place. That's been in place since 2015. I think that the strategy now, though, is to get off gas, which we don't have any control over the price of. And the best way to do that is certainly renewables, because they're cheap, they're popular. The more wind or solar that we use, the less expensive gas that we need. And of course, people are still very worried about the climate change, which is still a pressing issue, even if it's a more long-term one than energy security.
It seems that the salience of climate change as an issue has dropped down the political agenda as people look at their heating bills, for example. It seems that potentially people are more worried about the pound in their pocket, at least in the short term. Does it not make sense to lift that moratorium on fracking as well as going hell for leather at, for example, solar and wind? Does it not make sense to have some of those hydrocarbons used in the short to medium term, particularly before that nuclear baseload can be set up?
So I think the important thing to remember here is that nothing cuts bills quite like renewables now, because they are the cheapest form of power production that we have. With onshore gas, even if we did take the 3 to 5 years of exploring to see if it was even commercially viable, it still wouldn't be able to cut gas price, which is set at a European level. So onshore wind, offshore wind, solar, those are definitely what you need to bring online if your aim is to cut bills. The other thing, of course, would be insulation, and the Chancellor moved a bit on that in the spring statement by reducing VAT on home upgrades. So I think reducing the amount of energy that we waste is also another way to cut bills. So yeah, there's two things. If you want to cut bills, it's renewables and insulation are the key ways.
What are we looking at in terms of the popularity of these renewables? Of course, at the start of the last decade, there was a huge amount of disagreement over the production of onshore wind farms. Lots of MPs are still particularly reluctant about approving them within their communities. Now, some opinion polls seem to have shifted on this issue, but the overall mood music in Parliament seems different. Yeah,
so, I mean, Conservative Environment Network, we have a parliamentary caucus of about 130 to 133 MPs. A lot of them are very much up for offshore wind, these days. And I think the public's come with them. And I think there's three reasons for that. It's cheap, so it does cut bills, especially when developers offer direct money off bills. Say Octopus, for example, is offering up to £350 to those who live within 3 kilometres of a wind farm. There's the renewed security rationale, which wind can definitely be part of to reduce our reliance on volatile gas. And the third thing is, like you said, the opinion polls show that those who live in rural areas and Conservative voters who tend to live in rural areas more than urban areas are definitely much more up for onshore wind farms. And I think that's just a development that MPs are very much aware of.
It's a fascinating development there. I suppose this story will run as in the run-up to Thursday. For now, Jack Richardson, thanks for joining us here on The Briefing to talk through those issues. Well, let's head straight to Westminster now to